All right, what's going on, guys? And welcome back for another blockchain future. Looks like there's some news today about stablecoins, specifically the Ethereum DAI stablecoin, which I have spoken a lot about. The SEC, or the Securities and Exchange Commission, has specifically called out certain stablecoins because of possible reasons to specify them as a security. For those of you not aware of what is a security and not a security, think of a security like a stock or something that you purchased, um, believing that you are then going to make money off of that, and that the entity is actually, um, you're purchasing a part of that company, and you expect that investment to make money. I did get into that a little bit with the STO video that I made, which is popping up in the corner now. If you want to watch that, it gets into the Howey test and how the SEC in general kind of checks to see if something is a security. But this is specifically about stablecoins, and I thought it was pretty interesting. One of crypto's buzziest stablecoins might be heading for trouble. The SEC's, quote, crypto czar has implied that DAI and other stablecoins may be securities, and that would be bad news for its fans. Few things are buzzier in the blockchain world right now than DAI. The Ethereum-based crypto token uses smart contracts to adjust its own supply in order to keep its value stable and pegged to the US dollar. Advocates envision it is a crucial component of a decentralized financial system. In theory, such a system would make financial services such as lending accessible to people who don't have access to traditional systems. For example, because they don't have a bank account or credit history. And I've talked about decentralized finance, DeFi. Video for that is also popping up in the corner. It is going to be crucial for the future of crypto. The whole idea behind crypto is really removing the third parties, and decentralized finance is in the center of all of that. But while DAI, developed by a company called Maker DAO, is certainly trendy at the moment, recent developments suggest that its future is not all certain. On Friday, Valerie Sispanik, senior advisor for digital assets at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's Division of Corporation Finance, suggested that some so-called stablecoins may be securities. That would make them subject to strict and expensive regulatory requirements. There are 3 stablecoin categories, said this person with the weird last name. Some are backed by real assets like gold, some are backed by fiat money held in the issuer's bank account, and some, like DAI, rely on more complicated mechanisms to maintain price stability. The SEC person with the weird name didn't say any of the categories were off the hook, but she went out of her way to single out the third one. Coins that rely on some sort of pricing mechanism to maintain their value, she said, may fall within the purview of the SEC, whose charge is to protect investors from fraud and scams. So where would we be without the government protecting us? In particular, if a stablecoin has some central party controlling the price fluctuation over time, that might be getting into the land of security, said the securities person with a strange last name. Well, most of the stable coins, this paragraph here, most of the stable coins, including Tether, do work in a weird method of, tokens are burned and created in order to keep the price at a certain level. I think most of them work that way. And also, as I mentioned in another video, which is popping up right now about Tether, Tether actually, Tether is not backed by money anymore. It is backed by multiple types of assets. So I'm not sure where that would make Tether fall into this. I think a lot of people would like to see a real audit on Tether, though they have gotten more transparent, as some people have said in the comments, which is appreciated, but there's still some critics out there that want a real audit to be done on Tether. Back in December, the founders of an algorithmic stablecoin project called Basis, which had raised $133 million from high-profile venture capital firms, cited securities law as the reason for abruptly shutting it down. Having to apply U.S. securities regulation to the system had a serious negative impact on our ability to launch Basis, they wrote. Though DAI works differently, and its adherents would argue that it is not all centralized, the SEC person with the weird last name description was broad enough to imply that it may not be immune from legal issues similar to those Basis faced. It's not only regulatory uncertainty that DAI faces. Can it really remain stable forever? Instead of fiat money, it uses Ether as collateral. That's risky, since at any time the price of Ether could crash and bring the stablecoin down with it. DAI accounts for this by using a strategy of over-collateralization. For every $100 worth of DAI in circulation, the system is supposed to keep at least $150 worth of Ether locked up as collateral. Now, if we actually look at the DAI, the Maker DAI's page, they actually have a fail-safe for the Black Swan event. Let me see if I can find it. I remember reading this. That was in part 1. Here it is. Okay, let's check this out. It's worth it. Hang with me here. Instances true Black Swan events in the real world. So the risk is that of something like that happening. Okay, so just totally ignore, of course, problem, blah, blah, blah. So they're talking about a flash crash here. So if there's a flash crash happening. So the risk of that, of something like that happening, basically has to be accounted for in the risk models themselves, right? Because that's like something like, wow, a lot of likes, that can always happen, right? I mean, there are many instances of true Black Swan events in the real world where there are assets that just have huge crashes. And this really also speaks to the reason why you have to have multiple collateral types, right? You can't keep all your eggs in one basket. So Maker does have a plan for DAI to counter this. One of them is the multi-collateral DAI, which will, as more assets are wrapped in Ethereum, like the wrapping Bitcoin, and then there's also lots of other ERC20 tokens that can be used as the underlying asset. I really don't think that this is actually a good argument from the SEC. Also, the wording here is very specific. It's funny because it says keep at least 150. When you create a CDP for DAI, you can actually make your percentage or the over collateralization. You can actually turn that up to whatever you want. If you want it to be at 200% instead of 150%, you can turn that up to whatever you want. It has to just be at least, for every 100 worth of DAI, you have to have 150 worth of Ether. But you can do, for every 100 worth of DAI, you have $200 worth of Ether. So you can actually calculate that out in your own CDP. So I'm not really buying what they're selling. If the price of Ether falls below a certain threshold, a smart contract automatically sells the collateral in exchange for DAI, which it then takes out of circulation in order to retain a, quote, safe ratio. The Maker DAO company or community, which includes holders of a second token called Maker, can also vote to adjust something called a stability fee, which is the cost of minting new DAI. In recent weeks, the coin has struggled to keep its $1 peg, trading at prices as low as 96 cents. In response, the community has now voted 3 times to increase the stability fee. The episode suggests more important then the question of whether DAI is a security is the question of whether it's sustainable. And if it's not, let's hope we can find out before it becomes part of the basis for a new global financial system. Well, this article is written by MIT Technology Review, so nothing against them, but I really don't think they understand what's involved with the underlying smart contracts, the oracles involved with DAI, how they're getting information of what Ether is worth, how they're adjusting for it. There's a lot involved. It is early, and anybody that works in the technology industry knows that when things are early, you have to stress test them. You have to get them out there. So I have faith in DAI. I don't think that there's any issue here. Now, the SEC coming in and actually trying to make it a security sounds absolutely ridiculous. I have no problem with them coming in and actually regulating the other stablecoins for that are just supposedly linked to a bank account that has cash in it, supposedly, or is using something else as a underlying asset like real estate, or there's lots of weird stablecoins that are coming out in that manner. So this was pretty interesting. I don't know if this was just trying to scare the community, but the article was pretty interesting regarding stablecoins being labeled as securities. One other thing regarding DAI that I saw was there's the Fora store, which now allows you to purchase items using DAI. So it says here that you can go to their marketplace and buy up to 10 million products using Maker's DAI. So this is good. You can see the community is growing, the space is growing, decentralized finance is growing, and it will continue to grow. Hopefully the government doesn't keep trying to get its hands into something that's supposed to be decentralized and keep government away from it. So that's all I got for today. Please like and share the video, and have a great day. Thanks.